Yeah, come down. I'll wait for you. Hayim mutad. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nihya le'baro. האם מותר לתת מי בושם בשבת או ביום טוב, בידיים או בפנים, או יש לאסור משום מוליד ריחה? Are you allowed to put perfume or cologne on Shabbat on your hands or on your face, or is it not allowed because you're putting a scent into your body and we don't want that to happen? So the Gemara in Betza says, Rabba v'Rabbi Yosef ta'amri tarvayu. Rabba and Rabbi Yosef both say, Sahufe kisa ashira'e b'yomat haba asur. Ma ta'ama mishum deka molid reha. What does this mean? Rashi explains, Sahufe kisa ashira'e kfiyat kos mebusam al shira'im shel malbush. Le'achnis bo reach habosem shebakos asur mishum shehu molid reach bebegadav. They used to have like I guess the best way I can describe it is like lanterns with like burning coals and fragrances from flowers and herbs inside. When they wanted the scent to go out, they would open the box and the smoke would go everywhere and it would fill the house with a very nice smell. So the Gemara Beitzah says, for example, Rabban Gamliel, on Yom Tov, they would do this in his house. When all the guests would come over, they would open the box and all the house would have a perfume. So the question is it allowed? So Rabbah and Rabbi Yosef both say, if you take this coal box and then you put it and you open it onto your clothing, so you make your clothes smell good. If your clothes smell good, then everywhere you go, you're going to smell good. They say you cannot do it on Yom Tov. Because it's molid reach bebegadav, because you're adding a scent, like almost like a permanent scent to your clothing. If you look at Shulchan Aruch, the Rama says you shouldn't do it. Now Shulchan Aruch himself, he writes that you should not do this to items in your house. Like you want to take, I don't know, your books, you want them to smell good or something kelim in the house, vessels in the house, and you want to make them have a nice smell, he says you can't do it. The Rama adds your clothing. The Rama says even your clothing you can't do it too. It's not a halacha deoraita. It's molid reha. It's a d'Rabbanan because it's almost like a melacha. It's not a melacha deoraita. Molid reha is adding a scent to something. It's not deoraita. It's a gizram d'Rabbanan. I believe Rashi says it's because it's nid'eh ki melacha or domeh le melacha, something like this. It's a rabbinic. Ulam, however, so the Rama says you can't do it on your clothes. The Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh, Hishmitu halachazu. The Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh, the three pillars of halacha, they don't say this halacha in their books. Now, they talk about the kelim, like I said, your books, your chairs, furniture, but they don't specifically say clothing. The Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh don't say clothing is not allowed. Katav Rabbeinu Hagan Rabbi Chaim ben Atad, the Or Chaim writes in the Sefer Rishon LeZion, Shehem Sovrim, the Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh hold, She'en halacha k'Rabbi Yosef Hazeh, that the halacha doesn't follow these two rabbis, and that you are allowed. Thank you, Esther. You are allowed to put. You are allowed to put a scent on your clothing. Why? Because Rabban and Rabbi Shi, who came later in the Gemara, disagree with them, and we'll follow Rabban. Thank you. We'll follow Rabban and Rabbi Shi. So again, Rabban and Rabbi Yosef say you cannot put besamim, cologne, perfume on your clothing on Shabbat Yom Tov, and the Rama holds like this also. But the Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh don't say this halacha, and the Or Haim writes because they must disagree. And according to the Or Haim, Rambam, Rif, and the Rosh will hold you can put perfume on your clothing. וכן העלה הגאון רבי שלום שולל בספר נווה שלום, שלא כתבי הרב המגיד, If you look at Maran Bet Yosef, it seems like Maran Bet Yosef holds like Rabba and Rabbi Yosef that you're not allowed to put besamim or perfume on your clothing. To be strict. And even the Or HaHaim who says it's allowed, he writes, nobody lets this. Nobody puts perfume on their clothing on Yom Tov and Shabbat. Says the Or HaHaim. This is an example of something that's really allowed, but nobody does it. So once nobody does it, like you shouldn't do it either. In front of those people, you cannot say it's allowed because nobody does it. Now, the Turei Zahav writes, the Taz, he writes by the laws of Kohanim. שאסור לכהנים הנושאים כפיהם בשבת או ביום טוב לרחוץ ידיהם במים שנתנו בהם מי ורדים. That the Kohanim, when they want to wash in the shul, they want to add a little rose water to the Syrians were very big on every Friday night when I grew up as a kid. Every Friday night after Shabbat, rose water. It was like you have to do it. As everybody did it. So you guys also? Yeah, that too. You have that also? In shul, they pass around rose water? Yeah. We had two guys standing by the door. Also, we had a guy standing by the door. Every person on his way out got rose water. So the Taz writes, the Kohanim, they wanted to use a little rose water when they added rose water when they wash before they go to the Kohanim. He says they can't do it, says the Taz. Why? Because they're adding a scent to their hands. And according to the Taz, that will not be allowed. Magen Avraham writes the same thing. However, the Gaon Baal Hakam Svi says, what are you talking about? It's allowed to do this, says the Hakam Svi. Why? There's a Mishnah in Shabbat. In Masechet Shabbat, it's talking about all things that we do for healing purposes. You're not allowed to do healing, special things for refu'ah, unless it's sakana nefashot. But if it's not sakana nefashot, if you're not in danger of your life, you cannot do different healing things on Shabbat, ointments and cream, all these things. However, the Mishnah says that bnei melachim, princes, royal families who have a lot of money, if they have a little wound on Shabbat and they want to put rose water on their wound because it makes it better, they can do it. Why? Because they can afford rose water every day. They do on Tuesday rose water. I guess it was expensive in those days. Every day they do it. So nobody knows that they're doing it for the fu'ah. This is what the Mishnah in Shabbat says. You got it? So the Mishnah in Shabbat says they're allowed to put the rose water on Shabbat because they can afford it. I thought you're not allowed to put rose water on Shabbat. It's a straight up Mishnah. And Bnei Melachim can put rose water on their wound. And so that's a very strong question. So therefore, if you look at Maran Shulchan Aruch, he says, even though you're not allowed to put, a regular person would not be able to put rose water on his cut, on his wound on Shabbat, because it's very expensive rose water. So people don't usually do that unless things changed over time. But at least let's say it was a very expensive solution. Everyone's going to say, why are you putting such expensive stuff on your hands? Must be you have a cut on your hand. Must be you don't feel well. Says if you live in a place where rose water is very, very cheap and abundant, like here, how much is rose water? It's not expensive, right? How much is rose water? Yeah, it's cheap. People do it all the time. That doesn't mean they have a cut. Even without a cut, people put rose water. Mutar apa Shabbat. It's allowed on Shabbat. Because nobody knows what you're doing it for. It's a regular activity. And this is only about healing. Must be, you're allowed to, what about the scent going into your hands? Perfume on your hands. Must be, it's allowed. It seems that nobody cares if you're putting perfume on Shabbat. We have another Gemara that says in Shabbat, you're allowed to wash your face on Shabbat and your hands with frankincense spiced water and afar jasmine. He says min bosim. It's I guess jasmine dirt, jasmine mixed with dirt, something like that, on your face and your hands on Shabbat. Says the Gemara, it's allowed. And B'kai Malan says the Hacham Vadia, you can even get your hair. You can even get your hair wet with this water. Also, you don't want to squeeze your hair, or you don't want to pull hair out on purpose, but you can even wash your hair. Your hair is part of your head. And if a hair comes out, you should try not to pull out. But if it comes out, you're not going to hell for that, because it's davat she'en kavin. You don't mean to do it, and we hold like Rabbi Shimon ben that davat she'en kavin is mutar. We did a whole class on hair on Shabbat, and so you're allowed to put rose water or jasmine dirt or frankincense on your face and even your hair, says the Chacham Vadia. And the Rambam writes the same thing. If you use these types of fragrances, frankincense and jasmine, it's going to get all over your hands. You're going to smell like it. Nobody says it's not allowed. They don't care. It's allowed to do it. So we see from here that your skin, nobody has a problem with your skin getting a smell on Shabbat. And the Taz, who said the Kohanim cannot wash in rose water, it seems the Taz would not, the halacha is not like the Taz. And therefore, he says, Nitilat meh v'radim is allowed. Rose water on your hands, on your legs, and even on your face would be allowed on Shabbat. So he says over here in the Sefer of Rabbi Abraham Halevi, who was the chief rabbi of Egypt, when you put perfume or scent into the skin of your flesh, it doesn't stay there forever. It goes away soon. It doesn't last very long. When you sweat, it takes away this. You have to put cologne every day. You put if you want to smell good, or perfume every day. Therefore, you're not really doing anything. It's nothing permanent. It's only for a few hours. How long does a squirt of cologne last? It doesn't last very long, and therefore it would be allowed, says the chief rabbi of Egypt. Says the Ginat Viradim. If you're putting the perfume onto your clothing, it'll last longer. Onto a towel, maybe it'll last longer, or a handkerchief, and that you should not do. Says Hacham Vadia, last piece. The Ben Ish Hai, he writes in a Sefer Rab Pe'alim, like the Taz. The Ben Ish Hai holds you cannot even put rose water on your skin on Shabbat. Very strict. Like the Taz, the Kohanim should not use rose water, it says. Ulam, but we could follow the Or HaHaim. It was according to him the Rif and the Rambam and the Rosh that it's all allowed. And Rabbi Shalom Shulel also says in Neve Shalom that it's allowed. And it says It's enough to be strict and say don't put cologne or perfume on the clothing, but to go the next level and say you can't put it on your skin, like the Ben Ish Hai and the Taz, it's too much. It's enough. We're strict enough to say don't put it on the clothing. Perfume on skin, leave people alone. It's okay to do it. All these rabbis says it's allowed. And also Rabbi Yosef Molecho Missaloniki says it's allowed. Rabbi Abraham Antebi, who is a Halabi from Aram Sova from Syria, says it's allowed. Rabbi Shalom Al-Fasi from Algeria says it's allowed. Rabbi Chaim Binyamin Portumoli says it's allowed. And also the Sefer Yoshua, the Mishnah Berurah, Havet Haim, big one, Ashkenaz, says it's allowed to put rose water on your hands, the Kohanim. Well, the Devrehem Gam B'Sa'arot Yesh Le'akil. Chacham Vadia says even hair, as I think it's a Hidush, even if you want to spray your hair, that your hair should smell nice, it's allowed on Shabbat, says the Chacham Vadia. Even though it's a mahloket, what is your hair? Is your hair like your garment, or is your hair like your body, your skin? He says, we'll be lenient, and we're going to say you can get your hair smelling nice too on Shabbat. So halacha l'ma'aseh, the bottom line is, smelling water, rose water, perfume, cologne, don't schwitz it on your clothes. You schwitz it on yourself, on your skin, and then you can put your clothes on top. Rose water on the face, the legs, the hair even is allowed on Shabbat. My wife sometimes, I think this just happened to us. my daughter, the baby threw up on Friday night, and she wants to give her a shower. I'm like, no, don't do that. So she wanted to spray some like smelling thing in her hair. Spraying your hair on your hair is allowed on Shabbat. According to the Benish High, you can't do it. But everyone else really seems that it holds it's allowed. That's the halacha. Yes. Let me turn this up. Makeup